Hello, welcome everybody to the Tenderloin Museum. How many people have been here before? Some, but not all. I love that. And I hope that trend continues at all of our future programs. My name is Alex Scotto. I'm the program director here at the Tenderloin Museum. We were founded 10 years ago last month with a mission to promote the history and character of the Tenderloin neighborhood very specifically. We do that with this permanent exhibition, which is what we're sitting in right now, that gives an overview of the neighborhood's story. And we have a small art gallery space, but a lot of what we do is public programs. We do program at least once a week, walking tours on Saturdays at 2 p.m. And since April, we have been producing an immersive theater experience based on the events of the Compton's Cafeteria Riot, one of the Tenderloin's best-known overtures in its history of trans-led militant resistance against police harassment and discrimination. That happens at an annex space over on Larkin Street on Friday. Thank you, Lord Frederick. I appreciate that. It's been a monumental lift to get this thing actualized in the neighborhood where the Compton's Riot happened. And every show has been sold out. We have tickets up through October. Hopefully it continues in perpetuity for at least a while. And if you haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to get tickets, go see the show. If you like what we're doing, if you like the museum, a great way to support us is to come to more programs, bring friends, make a donation, become a member. And if you become a member, you get fun perks, including discounts to the Compton show. So you can talk to me about that after the program, or find your way online later. We are here today for the second of two programs that the museum has organized in concert with this artist circle, which is this formation that came out of the Shaping Legacy project, which is a multi-year equity-focused initiative by the San Francisco Arts Commission to examine the monuments and memorials of San Francisco's Civic art collection. And it's been an incredible honor to be a part of this project. It's manifested in a bunch of different ways, namely, some kind of reformed, re-envisioned requests for new monuments and memorials and kind of creatively imagined versions of those things. But best of all is I think it's brought a bunch of artists and a bunch of organizations into closer dialogue with the city. And it's been a really cool thing for the museum to be a part of, and we were lucky to be one of 4 organizations to assemble what was called an artist circle of community collaborators, and a bunch of them are here today. We worked with one of our kind of most regular collaborators, Skywatchers, which is an incredible, thank you, Lord Frederick, for starting that applause. Skywatchers is an incredible organization, a kind of community performance collective that is maybe rooted in movement and ritual, but does a lot of things, and comprised primarily of Tenderloin and Tenderloin adjacent folks, along with the dancer Preeti Rama Prasad. And they kind of spearheaded our first program back in April. And the other 2 members of our cohort are Ramakant Oristers and Lois, and they spearheaded this program called Black Eyes on Black Art. We've worked with both of you over the years in a handful of capacities. Ramakant, I think you've done a crochet jam, maybe before my time, but here at the museum and all over the Tenderloin. Long-time community member, practicing artist, and Maddie, I think we first encountered each other with your quilt project, swim gallery initially, and then later Root Division was an amazing community quilt that was kind of assembled over many years, and so both of you have been incredible collaborators in the project of the Tenderloin Museum, and we were excited to have you lead this collaboration tonight. I'll let you introduce your 3 guests. Thank you all so much for being here. Yeah.
Nope.
No. Okay, cool. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here with us this evening. This is going to be a conversation and exploration called Black Eyes on Black Art. Thanks to Ramika and myself, and thank you to the Tenderloin Museum for electing us to be part of this year-long experience. This is one of our culminating projects and offerings to community. I want to give reverence for the opportunity to have this conversation. Part of my work is facilitating conversations critically around the things we experience, and specifically art, and what brings out our artwork. And so I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for the mutual witness and participation of the audience and ourselves on the panel. So thank you. I also want to name that it's August, and so I want to honor Black August, and in the history and practice of Black August, which is a radical practice birthed out of the Black Panther movement, we take August as a month to do spiritual, educational, physical wellness, and criticality practice. So right now, you are all in the practice of Black August, so thank you for joining us in that as well. Okay, and so to start, I want to get us on the road because we have a beautiful conversation in front of us. So I would like for all of us maybe to self-introduce. I always think that's the best way to do it. And then we are going to go on the journey of this conversation. So again, I will start. My name is Maddie, and Maddie Boyce, and I'm an interdisciplinary curator, often facilitator of conversations, and community advocate. So that's me.
I'm Cheryl Derricat. I'm a visual artist. I'm known for bringing the ancestors to life through the medium of glass.
I am Ramakan Orwistis, and I'm a sculptor. I started Crochet Jam, which is a way to foster social interaction and creativity using the folk art tradition of rag rug making. How's that going? That's good enough, but thank you.
And he just had a birthday last week.
Oh.
Happy birthday. That's what happened. My name is Marvin K. White. I am a poet, a writer, a visual artist, and I'm also the senior pastor of Glide Memorial Church.
I'm Kijo Lee. I'm an art historian, a curator, and a writer, and I'm the chief of curatorial affairs and public programs at Museum of the African Diaspora here in New York.
Cool, so applause for our panelists, and also applause for all of you for showing up. Thank you. Witness is important, and equal participation, so I appreciate you. So to start us off, I want to lead us with a quote and ground us with a quote that Ramakan and I kind of birthed out of a conversation we were having in preparation for this conversation. That quote is, "The expression of our survival is what our art is. We are the art in essence and in fact." So I will lead us with that. Again, this conversation is called Black Eyes on Black Art. I'm going to start our group off with a question, and then, as you see, we all have papers in our hand, and we are going to engage and respond and kind of like riff off of each other as is Black artists. So I think the first question for the group is, how does making or seeing Black art as Black people help us navigate this moment? And this moment can be as big or minute.
You're looking at me. Well, I like to just go on and get in it. So I am originally from Washington, D.C. So I think this is a moment that we have to recognize increased authoritarianism, increased militarism, and increased cultural policing is how I frame it, with this inquiry into the Smithsonian, which I know everybody in this room knows is a set of museums that our tax dollars have paid for a long time. So as a Black artist who often works with representations of Black people, living or dead, I think my work and many people's work here is very much a part of the archives and making sure we have that archives when we come out of this moment.
You know, I grew up in a small town in North Carolina, and so in the '60s, dealing with homophobia and Jim Crow as a little kid. So I knew that my parents knew how to raise a black child. I doubt that they knew how to raise a black queer child. And so I could tell that they were there were machinations. I could see them all whispering to each other, or they're cooking together. You can just feel it. And so I thought, okay, so when my parents saw me drawing and painting on the kitchen table, they knew that I was not taunting or being taunted by the police in the 60s and 70s, nor was I, acting out in the neighborhood, if you know what I mean, right? And I was drawing and painting, and I was probably 10 or 12. So my point is that I was doing that at 10 and 12, and the same thing's happening in a different way now. So I think the idea of what is it, the question about, making or seeing black art now is a way of healing and seeing a story that unless you're black, you have no idea what it's like to be black in America. And the art that we use, whether it's dance or poetry or whatever it is, right, crocheting or knitting, whatever it is a way to navigate an incomprehensible existence. I could say more, but.
I'm thinking, like, if I'm an artist in this moment, like I have been an artist in other lifetimes, the reason why I'm an artist, a black artist in this moment, is to explore blackness at the intersection of all that's going on right now in this 60-year-old body. When in other lifetimes I was 20, I was 30, I was 40 as a black artist. This time, in this last quarter, of this life, with so much going on, the eschatology, the end of the worldness, the over-policing, the identity wars, it's like, I am here to put blackness against all of that, to see what comes out of it. And I think it's a very particular assignment to be here, black, queer artists, working in the prophetic in 2025. Just to test it, to see when you add black to this, what comes out of it, and that's the work, put black in everything, like Lowry's.
I also love the joy that's happening in this room.
And I think connected to what you've all said, as an historian, I'm actually unsurprised at where we are because of the ways that the historical cycle works, where any sense of progress, and I put that in quotes because that means different things to different people depending upon your position, is met with an exponentially higher reaction, a closed down, authoritarianism, anti-intellectualism. And so for me, black art actually helps me see that blackness is the source of everything. It's not me putting it against anything, that is the source material. For example, our fall exhibition, which is called Unbound Art, Blackness in the Universe, is actually really thinking about the consonance between cosmic blackness, dark matter, black holes, which they said were empty, but we now know are not. All of the sorts of unknowability and contingencies that surround the ways we didn't know where a black hole was, except everything around it would act fucked up. Right? In the same way where there's too many black people in one space, shit starts to get fucked up. So it's thinking about those things, and that as source material is really, and it helps me cast out into the cosmos to really gain perspective, right, on sort of universal machinations that are happening and shifting. So it's harder for me to focus on the local because it's so painful. So part of my own healing is actually contending with these sort of universal movements and seeing the lack of power that white supremacy actually has if we cast doubt further, not to take away from our lived experiences, but just to have another tool with which to imagine the world otherwise.
I often, when I'm really ready to have an existential crisis, which I love to have. I love, like a weighted blanket moment. But I think about, here we are, on this big ass ball of fire, moving through the universe at 70,000 kilometers per hour. Why the fuck are we worried about what seat we have? About identity politics, about race. This is about creation and moving and being on this ride, And if I am picking a seat on this ride, it's really important to me that I do stay, I know what seat this is, in the Tenderloin, 2 blocks down the street, very local, eating what I eat, wearing what I wear, acting how I act in this moment, and then just throwing my hands up and going, on this ride. But I'm very clear that I'm on this ride, but what grounds me so I'm not just carried away is creating and staying in creation and putting my hands on something. They say, then I'll stop talking. You're looking at me. The way you can tell if you're not dreaming is like you touch something, and if your hand goes through it, you're dreaming. But if it doesn't, then you're in your waking world, and I think it's important that I know that I'm awake here.
So pretty, as complicated as it is, let's put it politely, there's no other time for us to be. This is it, right? And I feel as though in some ways, it's a privilege, because I'm still here. I just had a birthday recently, and it's been what's it called? 65. How can we claim I think being creative, and how we want to channel that, right? Wherever we, in whatever medium, the idea is like you take whatever medium you have, and release it, not try to control it, right? Whatever that medium is, it could be weaving, it could be painting, it could be dance, whatever it is, and the more you let go of trying to control the material, that could be our bodies, the material will reveal its secrets, and you'll create something you've never seen before. That's where we are now. We need to see that this is opportunity to create the change that's possible regardless of what we see happening around us. That gives us an idea of saying, this is what's happening, and it's so overwhelming, but there's opportunity that you need to rise to the occasion and meet that in the way that you can. That could be a smile, that could be saying, helping someone when you feel really horrible, when you feel mistreated. I'm not talking about these grand, I'm talking about the interconnectedness of all things, and being able to see and interact in the in-between of all things.
I appreciate my brothers whose years start with a 6, because mine starts with a 6. And one of the ways I've been entering a conversation in this moment with people whose years don't start with a 6. I just sort of say, I was born the first year of integration in America.
Yeah.
And I just let that sit with them, because we have such short memories in this country. And as a historian on the panel, I think what all of us are speaking to is the need to be futuristic in our practice and forward-looking, while at the same time acknowledging that we're the living embodiment of a change that was not supposed to happen.
coming there to the discussion that's already been.
Okay.
And it is, what does it mean to imagine Black art as an altar, an archive, and a galaxy all at once?
Yeah. I think.
She wrote it. And it just happened. It was already spoke to.
It's like the whole thing. But yeah, so that you know where my mind is cosmology. And it's because every human culture seeks to understand the origins of the universe and their place within it. And so, to me, when I say Blackness as the source of everything, I mean it's also how we can imagine or have a visualization of how time actually works. Because we tell these very linear histories and don't acknowledge everything that falls out. So this begat that. The Middle Passage happened, then this happened, then this happened. But what happened in all of those in between spaces? How do we account for them? So it has to be multiple approaches. So it has to be that it's the written archive, but we know that's always incomplete. It's validating the embodied archives, the things that we don't know as a fact, but know are true. It has to be trying to get yourself to immerse into your own perspective so deeply that you can sense what you're bringing to that work and what that work is trying to tell you. Back to your earlier point, Marvin, knowing where you are, but also understanding that all of this solidity is an illusion.
Yeah.
That is just all of our molecules moving around fast enough and attractive enough to stay together. So if we can remember those things, I don't know if I'm answering my own question.
You are.
So, and then thinking about, and then galaxies, it's also, it's so expansive because there are multiple galaxies. Ours is so tiny in comparison to the rest. There are these places with multiple moons and multiple suns, and we worry about our one little set of things that we're not even the center of, though we still like to think so. So I think that it's being able to imagine the multiplicity of Blackness. Again, imagining it as the source, not as up against something else, is how is how you can do that. And why it's important is because, for me, allowing Blackness and Black people to stand in for a universal that doesn't exist is a very powerful thing. I think every time we give a subjectivity the sense of being universal, what it actually helps us do is outline the fault lines and to say nothing is universal, but how do we live with all of these complications? And Blackness is a particular way. It's a particular lens at which you can approach it.
Wow. I don't have a response, but thank you. I mean, I think as Black artists, we need permission to go as far as you just went and know that you are tethered and connected. So you can go out there. Because often we get out there and we go, damn, I gotta get all the way back. You know, and it's scary out there sometimes. So for modeling that, you know that you're safe and connected and can go as far out, because you went like 18 galleries. Yeah.
Like the Doha were maybe like contemporary theoretical physicists 1,000 years ago.
Now you're going backwards too?
All the directions. So it's like, yeah, let's really think about that, yeah.
I mean, I think one thing that's special about like Black and Indigenous thought is the non-linear timeline, right? Is that, you know, we can go so far, we have to go back, but at the same time, we are already back in the distance that we have already traveled, you know? And as we're talking about these first questions, like my closest artistic practice is a dance practice, and it's a spiritual practice as well. And part of what like originally called me in that work, which is Afro-diasporic dance movement, I remember being in certain classes and like doing certain movements and like feeling it, like, and feeling it in a way like, oh, I feel this in my, like, in something else. You know what I mean? And I was fully present and fully there, and also fully whatever else was happening too. You know, and I think that's the beauty of, like, you know, the infinite Blackness, the infinite, like, especially as Black people, we always live with the spiritual consciousness. And I think sometimes, you know, those that present in the darkest of ways are living even deeper in that spiritual consciousness, right? And trying to revel with how you balance the Blackness of it all.
That's a good old quantum entanglement thing.
More is already added, more is already here, but like, you coming in?
Yeah, I don't want to make my brother Ramacon sad again. We've known each other a long time. I don't want to do that. I might. But, you know, I mean, I thought about sort of the title of this a little bit too, which may take us in a different direction, but this notion of shaping legacy. So how is legacy shaped when it's in the hands of the Black artist, as opposed to another lens on the Black experience, you know? And I think, you know, in my own work, I've realized that, like, I'm the conduit, you know? I tend to work really intuitively. I'm really interested in bringing out stories that people may not have heard. And so, you know, in the case of working with the story of Harriet Tubman, it was really important for me to get beyond conductor of the Underground Railroad because, you know, this was a woman who, of course, was a staunch abolitionist, but also owned close to 35 acres of property, had 5 buildings. When her house burned down, created employment in bricklaying to make a new house. You know, memorialized her friend John Brown with the John Brown Infirmary and was providing health care at the infirmary on property. And then when it was all over, had planned to leave the property to her local AME Zion church. We don't have a conversation about assets and philanthropy and estate planning when we talk about Harriet Tubman. So it's important for me when I approach how we shape our legacy, it's a fuller legacy as Black people, because we're not one thing.
No, I can comment on that. I don't know about that, but I'll do one thing. You know, I have to come back on that. But the idea of shaping legacy, you know, we don't always know in what way we have an impact on others, but we do. You know, we really, really do. And it's usually in very subtle ways that we don't know what's going to happen. Like, you know, to me right now, there are people who, during the civil rights movement and long before, who fought for things they knew they would not sort of live to see. Right? They knew they wouldn't live to see the rights that they were fighting for, the opportunities, but they did it anyway. Right? And so we all, in some ways, have a legacy to be what the future needs in a way that can help people in a positive way navigate that future. You know, and what do I mean by that? I mean, in my case, in my creativity, it's to be as authentic to my creative vision as possible, because someone needs to hear that. Because I didn't hear it when I was growing up. I mean, I didn't hear it in the same way my parents just did things. You know, the women in my family, they made quilts. They didn't go around going, they didn't explain why they made them, right? You know, they just said, "Look at this quilt, boy." You know, they kind of just, you know. But you know, looking back on it, and my father, you know, he just said, you know, we can't pay for that. We're gonna have to like make do. I grew up hearing, I thought it was somebody else that said, make do. Make do, Taylor. Make do. Oh boy, what's make do? So, you know, so my father, when he wanted to we needed something from the farmer's feed seed. I'm sure you've heard that all your lives. farmers feed seeds.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he would go, we're not gonna buy that, we're gonna like get a tin can and put some holes in it and nail it to a piece of wood, and then we're gonna use that to put fertilizer or whatever it needs on the plants. We ain't gonna buy nothing. So go ahead and get that tin can, bring it in another hammer, and we're gonna make this. No, I'm thinking, you know, old people. And now I am one. And I know why they're crazy. That's how you survive.
Yeah.
Right? That's how you survive.
It's a like interesting conversation, especially with Black folks, when we think about like legacy, and we pull out like the respectability, politics of it, that we have to be a certain kind of Black and move through the world a certain kind of way, always striving and to make stuff better for the next, and all that's good, I think they'll be all right. If I spend up a little more in this lifetime, they're gonna be all right. But I like the balance between like the order and the chaos, and I lean more towards the chaos.
That's all we got.
Yeah, but also, how do we contain it in a practice? I have a small gallery on Geary Street, and I do jar work, and I have hundreds of jars of random objects, and I invite people to take a jar, and we pour the items out, and then we create a cosmology. We create a ceremony. I had a jar of matchbooks, we pour them out, and I say, well, what does it mean if the matches are facing right? What if they're stacked? What if they're opened? What happens if you find a book that there are matches already out or matches burned? How do we create based on these random and regular everyday objects something beautiful and magical? Out of all of this chaos, we still need to create ceremony and cosmology and spell and root and magic and faith. And I think that's the work for me as a Black artist, is to take the political environment, the social economical, the geopolitical, just everything as material for art. Not to resist it, but to say, oh, that's racism is a color, not a structure, and how do I incorporate it into this thing? And these objects become, just examples of these, bigger concepts. But I think it's important that we create jar-size magic for people as well, to bring the concept down as big as it is. How do you talk about cosmologies and galaxies and quantum entanglements?
I can't live without it.
And we're already talking about it.
Yes, exactly. Everybody already is. Quantum entanglement just means that particles act funny. They can be connected and moving the same way across vast space. And then they have these things called spooky entanglements where you can't even figure out why. Listen, y'all, theoretical physics is about
cousin named Spooky.
Oh.
No.
I lost it.
There's a lot of good ones here. Do we want to?
We want to do whatever you want to do.
Don't offer me too much. No, I'm thinking about the legacy piece because I want to go in there and move that a bit further. So, how do Black artists carry, reimagine, or refuse the weight of legacy? Again, appreciation to Keisha. We all riffed on this together, and it has to be connected. And I also want to bring in Marvin because I think both of y'all, the make-do of it all. The make-do of Black experience,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And Black history and Black, like, lineage. As in addition to, like, the ordinary is sacred. You know, the quilts that we make are sacred, the matchbooks are sacred, the shoes we, like, the way we dress our hair is sacred. It is our ordinary, and it is also equally sacred and a physical altar to ourselves, whether thine other understands it or not. I think, and that's something that Blackness, because of its, you know, negation of value and respect in the society that we live in now, we have, whether we say it loudly to you, literally to you or not, we understand that we are sacred. And our ancestors have understood that we are sacred forever, for time and time, before, right, in the quantum. Yeah, so I ask the legacy question of you all, again, infused with the comment I just made. But how do Black artists carry, reimagine, or refuse the weight of legacy? Because again, it's like, can I live? Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I love that question. I mean, I think I'll talk about my work, but then I'll talk about some other people's work, if that's okay. So, I think with my work, you know, using glass is the refusal. People do not automatically think of glass as a material for monument or memorial. But that's my primary medium. There's a long history back and forth of representation when we think about glass as a material from the daguerreotype forward in photography, you know. So there's a relationship there that I like to bring out. So I think there's a material piece to how I sort of, you know, resist the weight of legacy. It doesn't have to be bronze man or woman on horse. And then I think in a broader context of, you know, how Black artists have used material, I think of so many Black artists that work in abstraction, which is not something that people feel is readily available if you're a Black artist. You know, they expect figurative work, so to speak. So what happens when you wake up as a Black artist and say, I'm gonna make some abstract work? You know, I had the opportunity to see the Thomas show recently because I was in Indianapolis to drive to a project that I'm working on in Muncie, Indiana. And it was just amazing to see this legacy of abstracted work, you know, now that she's getting her due many years later. And I'm sure we can think of other examples. So.
I immediately thought of Norman Lewis, who, you know, was painting from the Harlem Renaissance through the late 70s. And so, and the demand from Black critics was, because he moved from figuration to abstraction, was, what are you doing? You're meant to repair the images of us that came before. So that was sort of the mandate. Black artists are meant to repair the Black image. So representational art was at the center of practice. And abstraction was definitely at the periphery. And so I think that that is a way of making refusals, and it also made me think of like Lorna Simpson, in particular, especially the way she will turn figures away from the viewer, which is, y'all don't need to know this word, but I'm gonna tell you anyway, Rückenfigure, which is just the German word for turning a figure away from the viewer, and Rückenfigure. And the reason that is important is because in like landscape painting, you know, you see those usually white male figures looking at a vast landscape from behind, and it was basically you're supposed to be able to place yourself in the position of that person, but it was very limited. And so thinking about Black artists who are also utilizing that trope in a new way as a protective, so which leads me to this idea about the liberatory potential of the clandestine. What does it mean to actually turn away from? And I'm sorry, I have to bring back, that's I remember my other comment. Chaos, but for me it's also, so I did a show called Liberatory Living, right? And so to Ramakan's point about we gotta get busy, we have to be what the future needs, and my response was, but when are we gonna go sit down? We're always like, when are we gonna get to work? How are we gonna make the new revolution? I'm like, what if we were able to approach it from a place of fullness and rest rather than a place of urgency and lack? Because we are consistently letting or allowing, and this is, I'm saying these big statements, but I know that this is just a generalization, but to there's such a thing, a real thing as CP time. And we allow the majority structure to dictate our inner pace. And so I think that the refusal is also in that it's retaining the rigor. It's taking a year to make one piece. It's making a pound of gravel, even though I always say you can give me a pound of gravel if you want to, but that concept better be thick and delicious. But and it should take you a year to develop, right? That idea. So the slowness, I think, is the biggest way of refusing, and an abstraction in ways that even refuse capture. So I think about Lorna Simpson, Torquace Dyson, where their paintings don't even want to be photographed. So much escapes, no matter how sophisticated your camera is. So again, how do we slip? How fluid? I think I went a lot of places.
I don't interrupt.
All of them are good.
Hey, when I mentioned the idea of often, legacy, the whole idea, and using, providing. I'm not saying that necessarily are consciously doing that.
Of course.
Right. I'm just saying that we're doing our thing. You're grounded. You're able to say that you are connected, and that you can feel what needs to be happen, right? But it's not just like urgency. You're just doing your work, right? And you love it, right? You wake up and you fall asleep with your ideas of your creativity, whatever, on your mind. Your problem solving, even in your dreams, which I think is, and to be honest, I'm not worried about legacy. To be honest, I'm like, we're here for a little while. We're born, we're here for a little while, and then we're gone, and that's about it. There's nothing, and then our molecules are reworked, and then there's nothing lost because energy does not.
Cannot be created.
That is correct, right? So I feel like, what? All I gotta do is be, what's my calling, to use a, go ahead.
I was waiting for the ministry. Keisha was gonna say, that ministry, and just open up. Okay, come on.
So, whatever it takes to find your quote unquote calling. I mean, it could be long walks, it could be reading, it could be meditation, it could be, like you described the jars, whatever, right? Whatever it is to get you there, where you need to be who you are. And being who you are is always revolutionary, and that is the legacy.
Yeah.
I like that.
No, I think the work of legacy is for the watcher, the viewer, the person who's enjoying it, the consumer. I'm just supposed to be doing it, and I can't stop to think. I need somebody to stop and think for me. I'm like Harriet. I can only run with people who are ready to run. That's just it. And I need folks to understand that I'm not a business person. I don't know, the art world. I don't want to navigate those spaces. I just want to create and be in creation and do what I came to do. And it just feels weighty to have to think about legacy and fame and whether or not the work will survive and where it should be placed and create. For me, it pulls me out of creation. And I don't know if I don't think there's an answer to that, but it is really important that I stay in creation, and it might be at the risk of not ever being known. As a part of my practice at the gallery, I go by Scrap. If you've never been to Scrap, go to Scrap tomorrow. But one of the things that you get often at Scrap are full portfolios of work. Families that donate their art students work. You know, or this last time I was there was a guy who worked in like 8 and 9 foot tall plywood paintings. His family had hundreds of these big paintings, and they were on their way to the landfill, and they ended up donating them all to scrap. So it's, we don't even, what do you do? I'm so glad that he stayed in creation, and he never popped off, and became popular. And his work almost didn't survive, but by the grace, there it was, and I saw it, and it changed me, forever. But I don't, he wasn't thinking about whether his work, was going to survive. Yeah.
Well, what frightened me when I was at college, I got that residency there.
Yeah.
That was 4 months long, residency, phenomenal. Phenomenal. So I go in there and you see these trucks backing up into the recycling area, and they're just pushing out people's, portfolios and their scrapbooks, right, and their paintings and their drawings, and I was like, this could be, if I'm rumbling, you know, the rumbling.
Yeah. It's like,
if Shakespeare can make up words, so can I. So I figured, that if I'm doing that with somebody else's work, somebody else could be doing that with my work. Now, am I okay with that?
Are you? Right.
I don't know where I am.
Okay.
I don't make do. I don't know. I'm a little on the fence with the.
Well, can I add? I mean, I think there's a piece where both capitalism and unfortunately colonialism and white supremacy convince us that our existence, or the legacy of it all, needs to be beyond this. Needs to be on a newspaper somewhere. It needs to be, memorialized in an archive or in a bronze or this or that. Like, you have a deep legacy, period. And, you know what I mean? And everyone that knows you is your legacy. And that is all there ever needs to be, right? There's, I think the other whisperings of how much and how come and quantifying is not for the, it's not for the worth.
As an academic, so one of my mentors is Elizabeth Alexander. And I was in grad school, and she was like, so, where are you going to send your papers? I was like, what papers? These? Into a fire. My sucker is that hopefully it'll be 200 years from now that people are looking at my marginalia and scribbly scratch. And then it's beyond me, like, do what you want. I hope it inspires something interesting, but there's something I wouldn't have become inspired to be doing the work that I do if there weren't those fragments to chase, right? And so absolutely, but there will always be silences. Things, you threw away your receipts yesterday. I want those receipts because I want to know what Cheryl Derricott purchased at the grocery store on this day in August in this year, and how did that influence the rest of things, right? And how it's all material. Those things can become important. And my last story will be like, right after the Civil War, one of the biggest archives they found was in Washington, D.C. A worker was fixing the ceiling in a building, pulled out a thing. It was a whole treasure trove of care packages that were going to the front, letters of people trying to find their people. If you ever heard of Clara Barton, this is what started her whole sort of modus operandi. And so I would say, yes, we can lament that loss, but that loss is also generative. How do we let it not be foreclosing? It's why Sophia Hartman said critical fabulation is important and informed imagining of what happens in between. Stop it.
I'm sorry. Critical fabulation.
We like to do it.
I caught it.
just thinking about that part of our legacy is the ways that we're able to create out of loss. And it's not our only legacy, but that is part of it, is the ability to work out of what we sense and understand is true, or to take seriously what's passed down through oral tradition and having that work through. So, yeah.
Can I throw in some thoughts? So much has happened. So I feel like there's been shaping legacy on the personal level, and then shaping legacy on the broader historical cultural level. And so I think, I was speaking to that broader cultural level, and particularly with concern right now that it is all going to go up in smoke. But I think on that personal level, it is twofold in that, Kijo would be able to find a certain set of nicely labeled waterproof bins that are Cheryl's papers and whatnot, because Cheryl cares about those things. But, if Ramakan never cares about those, and I don't want to outlive him under any circumstances, but if I do, the Buddhist would say he will live on as long as me and his other friends continue to call his name, because that's the final death, when no one else is left to call your name and share your story, So I feel like it is kind of twofold, this notion of legacy. And then because the market crept in there, I have to say, having gone to Miami the year before the pandemic and having the opportunity to be in Little Haiti and sit through many of the dialogues, who owns Black Art? That was elevated by Zeal Co-op out of LA. I think this notion of the market and who controls it and how our art plays into that is, not a dialogue we'll probably solve in our lifetime. So just want to throw that in there as well.
I have a friend, an academic, who once told me, I was thinking about pursuing a PhD, and he told me not to, because
Most of us will say that.
yeah, he told me because he needed to make sure that there were artists out there doing the work that he can write about. I'm not sure if that's the reason why. And at first I was insulted by it, but then it was the most freeing thing, in the world, because I thought I needed I'm not an academic, but there was something in that moment that I thought I needed, to validate, my work. And once he released me of that and made me understand that it's the job of the academic to write about, the artist. You just keep making art.
To write about the complexity of you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
inexplicable.
In ways that I could,
That you're living. You're
that
busy
I'm
living.
Yes, I'm busy living.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I think that plays into Kijo's notion of time. I didn't need an MFA per se, but I couldn't figure out any other way to get the time to be serious about my art and sort of free some of the brain from the constraints of the day job and on and on and on. So, I think that's the other piece of it, is what are the structures that can support our practice at different points along the journey.
We have a very healing perspective on legacy, a very other-centered perspective on legacy. But the ruling class, the elite class, the billionaire class, see it extremely differently. And the legacy that they want to put out there through monuments and memorials.
Yes.
I'll get those two. Anyway, so how do we navigate that space? I know.
Just because, I trained in 19th century American painting and photography and came into contemporary art a bit later. So I was not going to the art fairs and all that stuff. Woo, child. That is ridiculous. What a ridiculous set of things. Because it's just all also so oversaturating. I can't, after like 2 booths, I don't know what I've seen. Because I'm just done. I'm used to standing in front of one thing for an hour and laboring over one detail, because that's just how my brain works. So when people are like, snap, snap, next week, snap, snap, next week. But that, oh no, ADHD. What were you saying right before I said?
Billionaires.
Billionaires.
Oh, yes. This was all to say that. So, you know, and there is a whole another echelon. George McCallum actually quoted me on his stories recently, because I said, I think I'm gonna have to give you one of them art barges, right? Like the wealthiest of the wealthy have these huge barges in international waters to escape all taxes.
Yes.
That have like billions of dollars worth of art on them, and also restaurants and their own humidor and whatever, so their friends can take their yacht to the barge and do the thing. That's what they're thinking.
That's
about.
what they're thinking.
That's right.
And their thinking controls how we live.
Exactly.
And that I find repulsive.
So we don't like that. And they were like, we were in some fancy place, I can't remember, and somebody was like, I can't even imagine being this wealthy. And my friend Teresa and I were like, well, I can definitely imagine it, but I also don't want to imagine what it would have taken for me to get there.
Oh.
To be grounded. Like, what is it take? The viscera that's underneath my feet.
And what do you have to leave behind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People have also heard me
Okay,
say.
if I gotta take it for the team.
I've also said I need to find a venture capitalist so we could buy some gemstones and a yacht and call it a life.
Right.
Even though my revolutionary bona fides would say otherwise.
You just got into your revolution of ease.
Sequoia, A16Z, they're all out there just waiting for us.
There's some conversation on commodification here, but I don't think we're gonna go there right now, because I wanna honor that we have about 10 minutes left, maybe 7 at this point.
Lock the doors.
So I'm gonna jump us back a little bit, and I'm thinking still about your comment about like Lorna Simpson and Norman, and thinking about the freedom actually that comes in abstraction. And maybe he was doing the healing work, and society, Black community was not ready to receive his version of healing offering. Right? Like, I am done with picturing us and re-envisioning us. I want to envision the infinite, whatever that meant to him, right? So the question is, how is art making an act of survival beyond aesthetics and/or commerce? What forms of healing and repair emerge when art is made for us, by us, and in community?
Wow, you know, I'm gonna bring another ancestor of abstraction into the mix. Sam Gillick. I mean, there was so much about Sam's work that was way ahead of his time, and how one could shape canvas as opposed to just leave it on the wall. You know, when you think about getting into your materials and using them, I think Sam was someone who really got that and stretched it. And to this conversation about commerce, and didn't see the financial reward until his 80s. Thank goodness he saw it before he died after a long and storied career. But I think, when I think about making, particularly in a place where we all know there's a lot of tech, I've had day jobs in tech, I'm not slamming on tech, but it always comes back to the hand for me. And so there's a lot of analog in my practice. And I think that analog is rooted in the types of traditions that Ramakan spoke about with quilt making in his family. I often joke that I was predestined to get the glass even before I knew it, because I had a great aunt and a great uncle that were glass collectors. They loved the glass from like the old West Virginia factories, whether it was high and blown, low and blown, you know, I love you was a piece of Waterford crystal. Well, who are you coming in the house? What have you been saving for? So I do think that act of making for me is very much rooted in a lot of family tradition and appreciation of fine craft.
You make me also think, Cheryl, that we also come from collectors.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
which we don't give our ancestors credit for the curio cabinet. You know,
Come on now.
you know, for the Avon perfume bottles.
Come on.
You know, for the collection of cast iron.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
the wooden spoons.
The
I'm gonna rethink that like makers and collectors we are. You know,
Yes.
I said my mom was an aesthetic genius. She was a butcher. She worked for.
Your mom was a
supermarkets.
butcher?
My mom was a butcher and a deli manager. I come from a long line of untamable ladies.
Wow.
And so, which made me think about what you were saying about respectability politics, because actually the women in my family did a lot of things that would have not been considered respectable and would participate in respectability politics, but that's a thing for another day. But there's a way in which I connected the dot and it floated away. The end. At the beginning. It's truly gone. Please, let's move on.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, part of it too, in terms of like legacy, in terms of aesthetic, in terms of commerce, in terms of Black art and evaluation of Black existence, Black material production. I think about how like our work has been for a long time. Like Benin bronze is for craft work. You know, that's a piece of craft. You know, like that's a part of the archive. And why, like, that is deeply masterful work, right? And so, just thinking about revering again, bringing back that word reverence, right? Because also Black folk were making too, and look what we did, right? Like look at the collection of Waterfords and glass and things, and look at the gardens that were made and the quilts that were made and continue to be made. You know, look at the braiding. You know,
it
and
wasn't until 2020 that Dave the Potter, with some of the South Carolina Edgefield potters, so enslaved potters who were working also with Irish indentured servants and other folks, all in this one space in South Carolina. He was producing pots with bits of poetry with his name on it, which was super rare. And for a really long time, like I was in grad school and people were like, well, we can't buy his pots because we only buy academic work. And my response was, but y'all didn't let us go to school. What you talking about? and so now, ironically, like the big major purchase is from the Walton family, the Walmart family, for Crystal Bridges, right? So thinking about that trends of commodification, it elevated that work, elevated its value, but also thinking about how Walmart pays the lowest for a predominantly Black staff. So it's also thinking about the complications of how we're shaping that legacy. That's where the art world and commodification come in. I resist the idea that when I show something, it raises its value, but I can't resist it because it happens, right? Something being in an institutional show automatically raises its value. And so it's thinking about all of those as part of whatever my legacy might be. It's like what's happening in Moab, or when I was at the Cleveland Museum of Art, they saved every email as part of, like they downloaded all of every curator, there were 27 curators. I can't even imagine how much data space that is taking up, but it's all of their correspondence gets saved for time immemorial.
But you know, the idea of the wealthy collecting other people's stuff, that's how they know they're wealthy.
Yes.
Right? That's their legacy. I mean, we don't want to, I went home one time, my mother's making oxtails. And I go, you never make oxtail, you go eat oxtail. She goes, you want to eat this oxtail. Right? Make do. Right? And then I walk into Zuni, and I'm just like waiting for my, as I want to do from time to time. And so I was thumbing through the Zuni cookbook. Guess what I taking other people's stuff, you know, as a part of their, you know, the legacy of the elite. You know, we know we have power when we can take what you got and put it in ours, and then show it to you in our space.
That's like, oh, sorry.
No, please.
Town Museum Circle. From the cabinet of curiosity. Look at all of the things, like you travel around the world.
Right.
Can they take it? You know, they can collect it, they can, you know, hide it, they can preserve it, they can inflate the value, you know, they can dispossess, you know, transport, but can they take it?
They can take, I think your point, they can take the actual object.
Yes.
They can't take the power of
Yes,
that object.
yes.
And we imbue all objects with power. Nothing has any power once we give it to them.
Yes.
Nothing. Right? So our power stays with the people.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why they have to take it to keep it, you know.
Well, also remembering that like we, the proverbial we, are the center of valuation, and they're not always going to understand the Creole in which we speak, right? And they shouldn't, you know. And they might be able to read a certain level, the proverbial they, and then be able to okay, that piece because of reference, because that has been validated, and this has been validated. There might be a whole collection, a whole lineage of artwork that we all know is very sacred and very valuable, but from the capitalist and commercial sense, they don't have access to that dictionary, that encyclopedia of understanding. And so I think that the sacred element of it all is that as Black folk, Black indigenous folk, the lineage that we hold is knowing, you know, at some point oxtails are going to be $75 a plate, you know, but like you were given, we got the end of the animal, you know what I mean? And we made what you now serve.
Ah, my goodness.
Right.
Is there
Forever, for all of
No
us.
person would say recently that Black folks made poverty look too chic.
Right. I mean, all the things. I mean, you think about but anyways.
I hope it gives a future conversation, but we do have to talk about technology.
Yes.
You know, and where we are in it, whether it is, you know, it's AI, large language models, and how the machine is learning Blackness as the new archon and the archive, and it as a tool of our survival and not our demise. I fully fall that is a tool that we have to embrace and use, you know. But some point we have to have a conversation because this technology will be the analog, you know.
Right. And often
In quite a few, and just like not that far off.
Yeah.
This will be the analog, and so
Yeah.
you know, I would love to, you know, to bring that into the, not now because we got.
Well, I think it is the next. We are in the next. Yeah, we're gonna do it because this will be our last question, and it's a perfect lead. How can we use art to navigate the uncertain future?
I mean, we're having this debate about AI all the time because, again, to a certain extent, for creating visual art, it feels like thievery. I'm interested in artists that are putting their own work into AI and trying to put and spinning it around. I utilize it for doing administrative tasks that just my brain can't capture. I'll put in a whole bunch of gobbledygook and say make a timeline. But I think that we have to be having this conversation on multiple fronts. So I think about someone like Rashad Newsom, who's been training in AI for several years in the moves of Black liberation, like literally asking, what are the movements towards liberation? But I also think that, you know, a friend of a friend tried to submit a curatorial essay that was written all by ChatGPT, not remembering that there are tests for that. And so then that museum was like, we're not paying you for this thing that you didn't write. And also, you still have to read those things really carefully, so it's the rigor. And then my own personal tragedy is that young folks don't know how to write or read cursive. So therefore they are going to rely on an AI that was trained by some tech bro to read something closely, transcribe it correctly, and wherever it says unintelligible, leave it. And so I always tell the story about being in Nella Larson's archives, and what I could tell is when she was really excited about an idea, because her lines would slant. And if she was really invested in an idea, it would be in pen. If she wasn't, it would be in pencil because she didn't like to cross things out. Like, those are the things you can't get from an AI transcription. So it's thinking about how is it both ends?
Most people wouldn't get that from reading that work, you know.
I know, but somebody will.
I will say, even in my practice, I know, like, as a public theologian, I understand the historical critical method of exegesis. I'm still paying for that word in seminary. But because I know that, you know, the archaeologists, the anthropologists, the sociologists, they've all done the work. They know what the monetary system was, what the political system was, what was happening in that time period. They know that there's a coin with Caesar's head on it, and then there's a Bible quote about Caesar, so we can say something about what's going on.
Absolutely.
I ain't gotta do that work. You know, like, that work is done. I just gotta, you know, get someone, and that saves me a week. You know, and then I have 4 collections of poetry that I have trained, you know, the model on, and I must have like 50 sermons in right now. You know, so it is not everyone's work, and even if it is everyone's work, I've been on the internet since the beginning. You know, I have had my ID, my driver's license, every online store. Like, I'm in there. You know, I'm like I'm the next person to get the chip in my head. You know, I'm like, you know, I have no like illusion that my stuff is not already in there. You know, like I am what made that. You know, and I know that it still doesn't have access to this because it's still just code. You know, there's nothing emotional. There's nothing spiritual, there's nothing intellectual, you know, about it, you know, and that's the work of the artist if you're going to use a tool, you know, to make sure that you inject that into it. Yeah, and
Oh, no.
I'll say that. I mean, you know, don't probably have as deep experience as you do with AI, but what I will say is AI is only as good as what you put into it, you know, and so I think from a visual art standpoint, you know, using AI in collaboration with a partner to do a particular piece that was huge, I understood that AI was going to work 20 times faster than Photoshop or Illustrator. But it took me a minute because I was like, AI, you know. And I think that's a lot of us because we haven't been working with it, we don't understand it. But what I began to see was, oh, I still have to do all the background research that I would have done anyway to get to Photoshop. We're just using this different tool now to make it happen faster. I think I have a ton of environmental concerns about AI, and that could take us down a whole nother path, you know, particularly when, as Black people, as Indigenous people, we understand where certain things are placed in community, and we have a long legacy of industrial uses in communities of color that have not been helpful, so I can't imagine cooling centers as being helpful, you know, so there's that side of it too. But the mineral mining, don't get me started on, you know, I mean, it's just unbelievable the conversations that are being had now around Bombay Bay or the Great Salt Lake to just think about lithium, and it's like, no, let's think about the toxic dust coming out of the salton sea. Let's not think about we'll get to the lithium faster if the toxic dust keeps moving. So, you know, there's definitely a ton of environmental concerns, and I mean, I think we could have a whole panel on that and invite some other people, but I will say this notion of Blackness or any other community of color in relationship to AI and how the models are trained, you know, I look a lot to the conversations around being a 48 that have happened and how people are really seeing a visual representation of what it looks like to have something programmed that physically is supposed to be a Black woman and carries Black women's memories, but has been programmed more so by a predominantly white team.
What do you just, what?
Beta 48 is, well, the actual robot itself is like the head of a Black woman, who is the wife of a very famous technologist. And so, and it's been programmed with a lot of her memories, and it gets at this whole notion of time. You know, it's kind of a love lasts forever. So yeah, we can talk about that. But,
That's crazy, trust me.
okay, come on.
I mean, you know,
Come on. You don't trust it. Okay, come on.
and that's it. That's
Leave that there.
leave it there.
And, yeah, I just want to have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
And I'm just afraid that it's like, Black people, we shouldn't let Black people learn to read. I don't want it to be that.
Oh.
You know,
Yeah.
Black people shouldn't learn AI because of all of this other stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just want to be, I mean,
That's great.
maybe that's not what's happened, but it scares me that that is possibly what is happening.
Yeah, I think that's a really important
Yeah.
theory.
Well, and I think that's an extension of, you know, unfortunately, many communities always being behind
Yes.
this technology
Yes.
and how we get access
Yes.
to it, whether the cost is the barrier or, you know, a million other things.
And we have to move fast because it's moving fast. They've already updated like the projections for when our robot overlords are gonna take over. And so,
You're already here.
Okay. Well, I think on that note, are there any lasting comments that anyone kind of wants to offer for the room?
just have to be in conversation with you all.
You're here.
Yeah, thank you so much for including.
Thank you all for coming and being in participation and witness with us. This was beautiful. Thanks again to the panel. I will let Alex close us out. I'm not sure when we close, but I know we went over, so we might go a little later. Thank you all for staying for this conversation.
So grateful to you all. That was like 17 galaxies worth of ideas. Really, really amazing conversation. Thanks to both of you for organizing and for facilitating. Thanks to you three for being here. Very special. And yeah, thanks to the Arts Commission for supporting this project, which is manifested today in this conversation and this public program. It's one of many kind of tendrils of the Shaping Legacy project, and it's happening all over the city still, and there will be more to come. So if you want to learn more about that, definitely go visit the Arts Commission's website. They have a landing page for the project that I think is an informative portal to this kind of multifaceted, many-layered work that's been going on for a while, and is definitely something that we can all participate in. And I think even after it's done, it's something that I hope stays present with us. Can I maybe ask you all a final question? Because I'm blocking the door, right? What is I often think my kind of guiding star here at the museum is the frame of place and the people that live in it. And what brought us here tonight is this initiative that's looking into San Francisco's Civic art collection. So, and I love that we've had this expansive kind of take on what legacy means in terms of time, and it's kind of more kairotic time versus chronological time, or the way that technology can define an epoch, and also how what we put into something, a tool, is what maybe comes out of it. So in that regard, it's what is the role of Black artists in the realm of civic, like the realm of arts and the like civic practice, and more specifically, what is the role of Black artists in San Francisco's, the arts layer of the civic? Yeah, it's kind of civic cosmology, so to speak. Because I don't know about you, but I've often, especially now, I'm like not thrilled about this like civic kind of web that I live in. Like there's some things conceptually that I'm like, oh yeah, like a democratic practice where we all have a say and like we are free, but then in practice, like there's always things going horrifically awry, like literally all practice. So like, yeah, what is that? I don't know. Roll now today.
I've only been here for a little over 2 years, but I think about Moad and Lava Thomas's legacy in particular. So thinking about Lava's memorial, to Maya Angelou and all the debacle that happened in that sort of civic space, and the ways that I've come to understand Moad helped to steward that through, who were always backing her, even when who were pushing in the echelons of civics. I'm not going to say the word, but in political spaces. And so I think that is something that we are still necessary for. And the complication around that is the expectation that Moad will be everything for every Black person, not even just every Black artist. So it's not only are we meant to support that, but we're also meant to be a community center, a cultural center, a visual art space, all of those things. So it's trying to, I think that and I'm taking too much time. But I think that web gets applied particularly to institutions in a way that can stymie what we're trying to do, because this idea that supporting just one Black museum in all of San Francisco is enough, and that we are large enough and capacious enough to do all of the things. Yeah.
and fix the problems.
And fix the problems, right? Exactly.
I think it's important that, I work in the heart of organized religion as a Black queer artist. So I think what's most important is not that I dismantle that system or even understand it, but get my friends inside of it to make and do art. The only reason I'm in there at Clyde is to make space for other people to come in. And I'm not even sneaking people in anymore. I'm just inviting folks in, and it is, people are really upset, about who's coming in there, and then my work is done. So I'm not, I don't understand, I understand I'm in a system that I wasn't supposed to be in, and if I'm in there, then it has to be for something, and the only thing I know is to, let my friends in, to do stuff. And and not get caught in the civic project, which is a distraction from us making, being, and doing. The forms, the grants, the recognition, what Lava had to go through.
You start saying amen, Pastor.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the question is, what's Black artists? What was the question again?
What's the role of Black artists in the civic realm?
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So our Black bodies is enough protest. Our bodies walking through a door, having a Black cadence is protest, because everything around us says you're not worthy, you shouldn't be here. So my thing is, I'm gonna see what happens. I get a little work done. I got work done. But this is the whole idea, like a black person taking a pencil or crayon or dancing or writing poetry is protest. And I say just rev it up, because the more we're told we're not here, because the world that we live in the Western world, which is code for the white world, would not exist without us. So the opposite has to be maintained as the lie. We didn't create anything, nothing out of Africa, nothing good out of Africa, right? Black people are leaving San Francisco, blah, 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 right? But I feel very empowered to have a black body in this moment. And this is the time to be whatever you want to define your protest is, and you don't have to do much. You just be brown, black and brown, walk through the door and you've done it.
Right. Just be.
Just be. I'm really
Yeah, I mean, you know,
take my drug.
place and civic life, you know, I mean, I think a lot of my work is rooted in place, you know, my studio's in the Bayview. But I also, you know, understand that it's not just about San Francisco when I think about my practice at all, you know, I mean, my public art is every place but San Francisco. A lot of the places I'm showing at this point are outside of San Francisco. But on the other hand, I have a San Francisco gallery, you know, so, and I think that, you know, in the context of this conversation, yes, whatever place we are in, being black and being present is enough. But I also take a diaspora view, you know, I'm all of those places because that's what it means to be an artist in conversation with the diaspora.
Thank you. I guess I'll close this out. I mean, I think a lot of the civic moment, and I think about, part of my work is a community advocate, and I work here at the Tenderloin alongside. And when you ask that question, I think about like valuing black people first, just period, in this city, right? Like, and then sure, yes, artists, absolutely inclusive of folks that are allowed to be artists, folks that are, you know, disallowed, folks that are seen as, folks that don't show themselves as. So there's that piece of it all. Like San Francisco needs to identify and value black people. And then in addition to, we can also value black artists. Lovely, love that. I also really appreciate your comment around Moab cannot be everything for all people. No black artist can be every black art, like, you know, cannot speak for all black art. You know, no person can speak for all peoples and all experiences. So I think that's really, really big and important to remember, you know? And I was just the other day, I was having a conversation about, you know, yes, Moab exists, and what about the Black History, like what about the actual archival Black History Museum for San Francisco, for this huge amount of Black history that exists in this space and in this city, right? And like the neighborhood that has been since forth gutted of its own Black history and has like tons of empty, you know, storefronts that could honor its own Black history. I'm speaking about the Western Addition, I'm speaking about Fillmore, right? And so like, what if there was a Fillmore? Like, why is there not a Fillmore Historical Museum, right? Like, and with all of those spaces. So if we're really gonna like, you know, and again, speaking to the fact that like all personhood and its spiritual existence is an artistic personhood, right? Especially for black people and black and indigenous folk, like, I don't have to be much more than who I am to be an artist. And first and foremost, the Civic needs to honor us to start.
Thank you all so much for being here. There's some beer and wine, there's some soda water. Talk to your neighbor. Come back and visit us later. Our next program will be on the 30th. Reverend Dr. Megan Rohrer is doing a walking tour with Miss Billy Cooper, who has really lived the Tenderloin for many decades. So if you want to go on a real authentic trip of the town, take that walking tour. And then we're in some alleys in September and on doing programming. So thank you all so much. Hope to see you all soon. And